Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods. Yeah, one in particular, I'm just a messenger. Let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dennis the Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Tuesday, Victory Tuesday for pretty much all of our teams. Browns came back and won. The Lions won in what was a really exciting game. And, Denver got 75 chances and was finally able to capitalize on Monday night. So it was a good victory Monday. It's a Victory Tuesday for me. In fantasy as well. Chubb's broken wheel, our losing streak lasted 1 week. This week I put up a minuscule 241.88 points. I don't even know
the highest score of the season.
Probably. I think it was. Yeah, it was definitely. I was the high score of the week by like 90 points.
It's crazy.
Probably next week I'll have like 5 points total.
Snake Eyes got his first win. He went up against Cole, Smog the dog. Cole had like 7 guys score single-digit points. I'm like, he was favored going into the week, and then just a bunch of guys just didn't do it for him. Jack took a big leap. There were like 4 or 5 teams in that 5-4 range, 4-5, whatever. She jumped all the way up to 3rd place with her victory. She was excited.
I mean, we're getting down the stretch. I was trying to see if I could figure out how many weeks regular season we have left. But so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams tied at 5-5. That is going to be a pretty good race. And then 6-4. Just above them. So, I'm at 8-2, John's at 9-1, but that's 7 teams fighting for the last 4 spots. That's going to be a pretty fun race down the stretch.
It is. I don't know. I was going up against Monday night. I had Matt against Matt, and he had Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, and Jerry Jeudy going. I ended up losing by 10, but I thought I had a shot. Gabe Davis, was my guy going. He gave me 9.6.
You know what's amazing to me is I ended up posting that super high score despite the fact that I started Gerald Everett at tight end, and I would have gotten as many points if I started myself at tight end.
Well, some days that's just how it be.
Indeed. Well, let's dive into the week that was, and it starts with the final international game down in Germany. The Indianapolis Colts took on the New England Patriots, and it was seriously, it was a barn burner. Let me tell you, just the most exciting 10-6 game you could possibly have. Colts getting the 10-6 win, moving to 5-5 on the season. Dennis, Colts now kind of in that milieu of AFC teams that are between 6-3 and 4-5. They're right there, 5-5. Still probably the 3rd best team in their own division. But do you think they can climb into this playoff race?
There's some possibility. Coming into this week, the Colts were the only team to have scored at least 20 points in each game. Now, they scored exactly half of that this week, so that streak is over. But their defense is giving up the third most points in the NFL, so that could be problematic. Good for fantasy because then Gardner's got to chuck it, but it really ended up being more of a Jonathan Taylor with 23 carries and Michael Pittman with 12 targets kind of day, and then a bunch of other people sprinkled in for a few, targets or receptions. It really, this defense runs through Taylor and Michael Pittman. Josh Downs has flashed and shown some good stuff. Alec Pierce had a little bit last year, but he hasn't done much this year. None of the tight ends seemed to step up with any consistent performance. I'm really hoping, going into next year, Will Mallory starts to flash some of the athleticism he did in college. He'll be going into his second year. I have a bunch of shares of him stashed, but Pittman's wide receiver 13 on the year. Minshew is QB 16 since he took over in week 5 for the season. So that's good for Superflex. It's helpful. But Pittman and Jonathan Taylor, the Zach Moss era is over.
Yeah, and we've kind of seen that coming for a little bit of a while. For the Patriots, not a lot of offense. For the third time this season, we saw Mac Jones get the hook, but this was kind of an interesting one where they threw Bailey Zappi in with a minute 52 left in the game in a 4-point game, and he did not disappoint by doing a fake spike into an interception, which you just don't often get to see that kind of a play. The Patriots
I don't think Mac Jones could have pulled that off.
Patriots are 2-8. What are we doing with them?
It's easy to blame the offense because, we talk Mac Jones. He's been pulled 3 times. The wide receivers are very inconsistent. Henry was playing well for fantasy at the start of the season, but hasn't done much since. Ramondre Stevenson, his volume has been inconsistent. Heck, Zeke ended up with 13 carries this week, and I think he had 2 targets as well. So, Ramondre had 5 targets and almost double the number of carries. So it's Ramondre's show, and they know that. He's the guy with the pop and the sizzle and the flash. But their wide receivers, other than Demario Douglas coming out of nowhere to be fantasy relevant, 6 catches on 9 targets for 84 yards, they're not getting anything from the wide receiver group. And the combination of the defense giving up the 6th most points in the NFL and the offense being the 29th highest scoring or lowest scoring, I guess, offense in the NFL this is like a classic game here, 10-6. It's who the Patriots are this year. Been some squawking about Belichick getting fired. Just signed an extension. Kraft isn't going to fire him mid-season anyways. I forget who it was talking that I saw that or listened to. They said, it feels like we're headed towards a mutual parting of the ways this off season. Bill, the last thing Robert Kraft wants to do is embarrass Bill Belichick.
Yeah, which makes sense, but they're gonna have to do something because it is not looking good. No. Next up, the Houston Texans traveled to the Cincinnati Bengals and got a huge 30-27 win. The Texans, they're what?
Said OH.
The Texans are now 5-4. How serious do you take them as a playoff contender?
I think they're playing above their head this season. I think CJ Stroud is playing really, really well. And I think that is something for him to build on. I think they're a year early. Noah Brown is wide receiver 15 since he returned from IR. Just like we talked last week with Devin Singletary and the comp to Alexander Madison when Dalvin was still in Minnesota. First weekend, what'd Singletary do? He crapped the bed. Oh, second week, comes out, 30 carries for 150 yards and a touchdown, catches a pass for 11 yards, had a phenomenal game. 5'8", 203 pounds. I don't think he's long for consecutive 30 carry games, but it seems like he may be the guy that has he has the fit for that offense, that zone concept. And we'll see when Pierce gets back. I think Pierce will step back in to a role. I don't know if I'd call it prominent, but Tank Dell, 14 targets, Noah Brown, 8 targets, Dalton Schultz, 6 targets. They're going to their top guys. With Nico Collins out, it'll be interesting to see how Collins' return impacts Noah Brown, because Brown has been playing out of his mind the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, and he's looked really good doing it. Meanwhile, for the Bengals, 5-4, they have a huge matchup coming up on Thursday, which we'll talk about at the end here. How are you feeling about them here at the midpoint?
It's a interesting situation. We've got Burrow seemingly all the way back from his calf injury, but now Higgins is out. Chase is banged up after that fall a couple weeks ago. Joe Mixon he's the run game, but he's terribly inefficient. He did have 4.2 yards per carry this week on 11 carries, so that was a plus. But 2 receptions for -1 yard. But they're not giving anybody else the ball in the running game. They're relying on Burrow in the passing game to win games for them, and Mixon to do just enough to keep defenses honest, gain the short first down, short touchdowns, things like that. The defense did seem to miss Sam Hubbard. I think that was part of it from their end. They gotta be more consistent on defense, and the wide receivers need to get healthy. Though I do think Tyler Boyd doesn't mind T. Higgins being out, because he knows he's going to be a free agent next year too. So 8 of 12 for 117 yards for Boyd. I think he'll take that as he tries to get himself another contract.
Yeah, and he had a pretty decent game down the stretch there. Looked pretty solid.
He's a good receiver. That he's the one out of that class that who was it? Boyd, Coleman, I think, and was Laquan Treadwell in that class as well. Maybe Josh Doxson. So there were some people in that class.
You're mentioning a lot of people that don't play in the NFL anymore. All right, next up, Minnesota Vikings hosted the New Orleans Saints, got the 27-19 victory. Josh Dobbs remains undefeated with the Vikings since he came over. But for the Saints, Derek Carr left with a concussion, a shoulder injury. We saw Jameis Winston come in. It was, I believe, 27-3 at that point in time. Winston gave him a little bit of a spark, had some turnovers late. They're off this week. See how Carr recovers. But do you think there's any chance we see some more Jameis Winston?
I feel like we should. I mean, in my opinion, it's time. We know who Derek Carr is, and we know who Jameis Winston is. And they are polar opposites when it comes to their approach to the game. You got YOLO ball versus I'll take this 5-yard check down because he's open and hopefully he can get 3 more yards for the first down. Oh, dang, he only got 1. I guess we're punting Derek Carr. It's been, put Winston in, let him get the game plan, work things out. He's going to turn the ball over sometimes, but he's also going to make plays down the field. Olave, 6 catches on 9 targets, 94 and a touchdown. A.T. Perry stepped into the Michael Thomas role. It looks like Thomas may be out for an extended period. And Kamara still had 7 catches on 7 targets. So I think that while Winston is known less for throwing the ball to his running backs, I don't think he had guys like Alvin Kamara either. And so his propensity to chuck it down the field and take chances, it's part of his DNA and who he is. But I think at what is he? He's 30 years old now, or 31, 29. He's getting up there. So I think inherently just will play a little.
Oh, he's 29. You're right. He seems like he's 29. He seems like he should be older than that.
Right. So I think they should give Winston a few starts, see what they can get out of him.
Meanwhile, Minnesota now 6-4. They've won 2 games with Josh Dobbs in there. They started out 0-3, and they're kind of coming on strong. Do you like them as a playoff contender in the NFC?
So we know who Josh Dobbs is as a quarterback, and he's not an elevator. He isn't going to make everybody else better. The plus side is he's getting Justin Jefferson back probably next week. Jordan Addison is pretty good, and TJ Hawkinson is phenomenal.
Can I just say I'd be okay if Justin Jefferson just needs just one more week to get to that full 100%.
So they have weapons. So Dobbs will do good. In that, Ty Chandler looked good when I think Madison got banged up. So I think Chandler is starting to ascend as well. He's more explosive than Madison. It's going to put Dobbs, who is a decent rusher. He had 44 yards and a touchdown. It's going to put him in good spots. And the defense is playing better. Over the first 5 games, the defense gave up 24.4 points. Over the last 5, they've only given up 17.4. So they've improved by literally a full touchdown per game over the last 5 games. So Brian Flores' defensive philosophy is starting to take hold. The defensive guys are playing better in the scheme for him. If they can continue to play well, maybe get a few turnovers, a few sacks, and not put Dobbs in a position where he doesn't have to put the team on his shoulders and be the guy that wins game. He can just distribute the ball to his playmakers. Then, yeah, I think they can push for it.
Yeah, I mean, the NFC feels pretty wide open, so it's all there for them. Next up, Steelers hosted the Packers. Green Bay falling 19-23. Dennis, a couple weeks ago, Green Bay's general manager mentioned this was an important stretch of games for Jordan Love. First year as a starter, young offense, young everything. Hasn't looked great or consistent. Could his long-term future be in jeopardy?
So I think overall, I don't know if danger is the right word, but he does lead the league in interceptions and is only completing 58.7%.
Which is saying something considering Josh Allen hasn't met a questionable pass he doesn't want to make.
But he's also QB 13 so far. So he's making plays. He's on track to be responsible for 30 touchdowns this year. So he's making plays with the offense. But he can't keep turning the ball over. He's got to tighten that up. It is his first year starting. And so I think we got to give him a little bit of grace there. The running game has not been terribly effective. And so he's been having to – Christian Watson was supposed to be one of his biggest weapons. Watson has frankly stunk this year. Nice kid, but he can't stay on the field, has drop issues. I like what I feel like Dontavian Wicks is going to replace Christian Watson.
Wicks, Doubs, Reed, they all seem to be coming along better than Christian Watson.
They are. And, unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it rolls sometimes. I like the it's a young team that needs to learn to win together. And part of that needs to be Love becoming a better decision maker, making better throws, completing more passes. And they're going to need to add something to the running game next year. Jones may still be around as that veteran mentor guy. I think Dillon's in the last year of his contract. I think he needs to go. They need to get somebody that they can count on a little more.
Meanwhile, the Steelers, moved to 6-3. They're winning. They've gotten the running game going again. 36 carries for 205 yards and 2 touchdowns. But Kenny Pickett, just 126 passing yards on 14 completions. Can they keep going this way without getting much out of the passing game?
And said they had 5 people with 4 targets, tied for the lead this week. I mean, at this rate, all the receivers are going to scrub their social media, not just George Pickens.
Yeah, it's been ugly.
It's they're winning in spite of Pickett. Pickett's QB 28 on the year, and the Steelers have been outgained on offense in every game, and they're still 6-3. So they need to figure something out. I think what they may be figuring out is that
they wasted a first round pick
because Pickett ain't going to throw them there.
Yeah. That quarterback class is looking more.
It looks good.
I mean, you got Brock Purdy, who was a surprise, and Sam Howell's actually done pretty well, but Ritter went through his.
We're talking about next year's quarterback class here.
No, I mean the Pickett's quarterback class. Ritter,
yeah, I mean, right now it's looking like my call of Howell being the best QB in the class is looking pretty good, though. I mean,
Brock Purdy. Yeah. Nobody had that, though. Next up, speaking of quarterbacks, the Tennessee Titans head to Tampa Bay. Buccaneers got the 20-6 win. Dennis, this is now week 3 of the Will Levis era. How are you feeling about the Titans offense?
Well, they can't run the ball. Derrick Henry, 11 for 20.
Can't really throw the ball either. So
IJ Spears, 5 for 18. He under 50% completion rate. He's a rookie quarterback who probably admittedly shouldn't have played at all this year. I don't know what that, if Tannehill gets healthy, does he get his job back? Probably, because I think that's what Vrabel is going to do, is defer to the veteran. They weren't happy with Malik Cunningham, or Malik Willis is who they have. Different Malik.
Yeah.
They weren't happy with his play. That's why they went to Levis. So if Levis isn't the answer, they don't have one. It looks like they need to go into rebuild. Henry's on his way out, but they need to find out if Levis is the guy. I feel like they're going to go back to Tannehill at some point, but I think they should just take their lumps with Levis and find out.
Meanwhile, for the Buccaneers, they started hot, 3-1 before their bye, had been on a 4-game losing streak before they were able to get this win here. Kind of a 3-team race there in the South, with the Falcons 4-5, them 4-5, or the Falcons are 4-6, I think now. They're 4-5, and 5-5 leading the way with the Saints. How do we feel about the Buccaneers in that race?
Oh, they're going to go as far as Baker can carry them, which is they're not going to go very far. Baker is not a carry the team kind of quarterback. I love that they're getting the ball to Mike Evans. Looks like he's a shoe-in for his 10th straight 1,000-yard season. He has 737 yards already, so he put up another 143, I think, this week. Baker knows the mission there. Get Mike Evans the ball. Chris Godwin is second in targets. He's not as productive. He's doing the short area stuff, and he's not putting up big numbers, but it's good for the team. I just think with Baker, when you say it's, he's like Jameis Winston. When you put him in the lineup, you're signing up for a roller coaster ride. There's going to be some good stuff. There's going to be some bad stuff. Rachaad White, he's not terribly efficient. He did do a good job with his 2 catches this week, but he can't run the ball, and that goes back to their offensive line. I got to be honest, I look around and I listen to fantasy people, and there's so many of us that are like, if you're going to build a team, you build it from the inside out. Like, I literally, if you put me in charge of the New York Giants this year and we have the 2nd draft pick, I'm going to do everything in my power to trade back, to where I can get a couple, 3 offensive linemen, yeah, I get it. Oh, this quarterback class.
Problem for the Giants, though, is that they've gone and drafted a couple, 3 offensive linemen in the last couple of years, and it just does not.
You got to draft more. Just keep drafting more until you get 5 that are good, that are really good. Go for it. There's Evan Neal ain't the answer on the right side.
Andrew Thomas can't stay on the field.
Andrew Thomas played really bad his first year, came in the second year and was like a new man, and now he just can't stay on the field. So they need, it's a rough sport to play, but I think they got to rebuild.
Yeah. San Francisco 49ers traveled to Jacksonville, and what was probably one of the more surprising outcomes of the day, just cakewalked them 34-3. Dennis, 49ers have lost 3 straight going into a bye. Come out, they look dominant on offense and defense. Are they back on track?
I think so. Christian McCaffrey had a good day. George Kittle had a great day. Brandon Ayuk was kind of meh. Deebo Samuel, he saved himself with a rushing touchdown.
McCaffrey, of course, did fall short of setting that NFL record. I loved his post game. He's like, yeah, everyone on the team scored a touchdown but me. I guess I suck.
Right. He's a good sport. He gets fantasy. There are a lot of fantasy assets on the 49ers. They're strong on both sides of the ball. Adding Chase Young, I don't know. You ever in fantasy have somebody offer you a trade and you're like, man, if I trade this guy to that team is going to be unstoppable. And you go, nah.
Nobody says that apparently to the 49ers.
It's crazy. So I play in some Empire leagues, and I will consciously not trade with the defending champion if they're looking likely to win again, because I don't want them to reset the league. Win all that Empire pot.
Meanwhile, for Jacksonville, they had been cruising along, had a 5-game winning streak. This was kind of an opportunity for them to show where they are in the NFL pecking order. If that's the case, what did you see from the Jaguars?
Seems like they're at the bottom.
It was really bad.
I'm torn because I feel like coming into the league, the metrics on Trevor Lawrence were just so good. And then he had the Urban Meyer year. And then he came back last year, and last year was Peterson's first year, right?
Yeah.
And so we were all ready for this giant leap this year, and it hasn't come about. And I'm starting to, I don't know if I'm convincing myself that it's a great buy low opportunity for Lawrence, and that I could conceivably end up getting a QB1 for really cheap, but he's QB 18 on the season. Will he take that step next year? Because they've had ETN, Kirk, Ridley. I think Ridley is he the Ridley from week 1? No, but I don't think he's the Ridley from most of this season either. So whether
it might just be the Paul Dano Riddler, you just don't know what you're going to get, but he might kill you.
Whether it's the scheme or something, I don't know. Lawrence, let's see, ETN has double-digit fantasy points in 7 of 9 games, and he's got over 17 fantasy points in 6 of 9 games.
I was kind of surprised to see him disappear on Sunday, and of course now they're starting to have the off-field stuff. Zay Jones got arrested. Not great.
I don't know if they're having.
Well, it's not a great thing for a team that's trying to build that winning culture. And probably the most surprising thing, if you were a Jaguars fan, is your division, which you thought would be a cakewalk. Fortunately, they have the super tiebreaker over the Colts, but the Texans are playing pretty hard, and they still have another game with them. They've only got that 1-game lead.
Yeah, it's I'm not sure what's shaken out with the wide receivers. Ridley is at wide receiver 43. I expected a lot more. And I was listening to I think Michael Fabiano today, and he said that because of Zay Jones being out, Zay Jones is the best X receiver on the team. He may not get the volume consistently when he's there, but he's the best X. And Ridley is, let's see, what is it? Is Y is the Z is the slot, right?
I think so.
And so that would be Kirk. He said Ridley is really a much better Y, but with Jones out, he's having to play that X. And it just says he hasn't performed as well. Evan Ingram's tight end 8. They're getting production there. Kirk is wide receiver 18, and ETN is running back 3. There's no excuse for them to not be performing better. I mean, they are 6-3. Maybe they'll gel, but
it's just the game, where they've lost their game. So it'll be curious, to see. And some of those wins that they had early in the season, like beating Buffalo in London, looks a little less rosy when you see where Buffalo's kind of shaking itself out. We're kind of at that. I think as we're coming to the midpoint and hitting down, we're actually seeing some of the early wins that seem like signature wins over really good teams. Maybe not quite what they're
more like Crayola wins.
Next up, a huge win for the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. They go into Baltimore and get the 33-31 win. Earlier in the season, Baltimore had come to Cleveland and blew them out when Dorian Thompson-Robinson was under center. Had a 31-17 lead late in the fourth quarter. Cleveland comes back, hits the 2 touchdowns to tie, shanks an extra point, which shades of what I experienced on Monday night, but they were able to go down, get that field goal, get the win. What does this win mean for Cleveland beyond just moving them to 6-3 and half a game back of Baltimore?
I think it's, you have to learn how to win. You have to learn how to win close. You have to learn how to win ugly. And the Browns have played a lot of ugly ball this year. No two ways about it. Losing Nick Chubb wasn't good. Jerome Ford had a good game, 17 for 107. But they clearly love Kareem Hunt when it's short yardage and red zone. It just is what it is. Hunt had 10 carries. Ford had 17. Hunt gets the touchdown. It looks like Ford didn't so he had 1 target, caught it for 2 yards.
Yeah.
But Ford has to earn the trust of the coaching staff when they need short yardage. He's not a little guy. He's like 5'10" and 225. He's every bit as solid as Kareem Hunt. Hunt's lost a step, but Hunt's always had a nose for the end zone. Now they just need to get, more consistent outside of Amari Cooper. Njoku had 9 targets. He had a good game. Elijah Moore, 5 for 7, needs more yardage. 44 yards isn't where we want to be there. They spread the ball around. Cedric Tillman played his ass off, 3 targets, didn't convert any of them. And the Browns defense is, they've got a good defense. I know they gave up 31 points to the Ravens, but the Ravens are a good team. I think that the Browns have to be able to say, hey, sometimes it's just going to be like that. I'd rather win ugly than lose pretty.
Well, and some of those points came off of, they had that huge fumble, and they also, I'm pretty sure they pick sixed, but each quarterback had a pick 6, and then Prochet had that horrendous muffed punt that led to points. So, not all of that is on Cleveland's defense, which brings me to, the Ravens, they're 7-3, but they're coming into kind of a crucial and brutal stretch. They have a big Thursday night game, which we'll talk about in a minute. Aside from Lamar Jackson, it just still does not feel like they have those guys like even Patrick Mahomes has Travis Kelce that you always know is going to be. And it's not that I don't like Mark Andrews, but we haven't always seen that just take it to the bank, ability there. Their running game, they have some different guys who are popping up and doing some things. Another touchdown from Mitchell. Zay Flowers had a decent game. You had one big touchdown catch for OBJ, but do the Ravens have enough focused offense to be a real contender?
Yeah, it's you talk about Kelce and the Andrews comparison there. The difference really is the quarterback, whereas in Mahomes, he'll throw it to Kelce no matter what. And Lamar doesn't do that because of how athletic he is. I think if Lamar forced the ball to Andrews the way that Mahomes does to Kelce, I think you would see a lot more production. I don't know that you'd see that many more turnovers, but Lamar knows that he's the most giftedly athletic quarterback in the NFL. And he'll just take off when he needs to. Mitchell's popping off, dollar store Devin A-Chain. I get it. Looks good. He's making plays on a few touches. I don't think he's going to get a ton of volume. Gus Edwards, it has become this year's Jamal Williams. You get close to the end zone, Gus Edwards is your guy. The big thing is that Zay Flowers is the number one receiver. It isn't converting as much as we would like to see, but he's 5 for 6 for 73 yards. Lamar only threw the ball 23 times. I think they only had 56 offensive plays total, so it wasn't like they were running a high-volume offense. Their defense has given up the third fewest points, and Lamar, while sitting at QB5, he's kind of been up and down. He's had some real good games and some not-so-good games. Andrews is tight end, too, even after coming off a 2 for 44 game this week. It all comes down to, can Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell, can they define roles and both be productive? Can Zay Flowers and somebody else, whether it's OBJ, whether it's Rashad Bateman, Nelson Aguilar, can somebody establish something consistent after them? That's the real question as we go forward. I think Gus is the guy in the backfield. He played 50. He's only been a little bit over 50% of the snaps. He played 52% this game, 75.5% of the running back opportunities, though. So he's carrying the ball, getting the occasional target, and he's getting the high leverage touches at the goal line.
Next up, the Falcons traveled to the Cardinals. It was the return of Kyler Murray, and it was a successful return as they got the 25-23 victory. The Falcons are 4-6 now. Heineke was okay, left with an injury. Ritter came in. Not a lot of the passing game. Decent day for Bijan. What are we doing with this Falcons offense?
So Bijan got the volume that we want as fantasy managers. Good game, 22 for 95 and a touchdown. He only had 2 targets in the passing game, caught 1 for 11. So for fantasy, we love that. The downside of it is the Falcons lost, and so Arthur Smith is here going, see, I told you guys, it's about winning for us. It isn't about stats. And so next week, Bijan gets 7 touches, and Tyler Algier, is going to get 15 carries and all the goal line.
I'm predicting in week 11, Bijan's going to get 0 touches.
Yeah. Are they on a bye this week?
They are on a bye this week.
Heineke wasn't playing great. He only about 50% of his passes. He did throw a touchdown. Pitts led the team with 5 targets. London had 4. They didn't. Threw the ball just 21 times. I'm not 100% sure what to make of this. It feels like they should give the ball to Bijan Robinson, throw the ball to Pitts in London, and everybody else gets what's left over. I don't care if it's Taylor Heineke at quarterback. I don't care if it's Desmond Ritter at quarterback. That should be how the offense runs.
Meanwhile, for the Cardinals, Kyler Murray returned and they got a victory. I'm not sure winning is the best thing for them, but be that as it may. What did you think of Kyler in his first game in almost a year?
I mean, it was a Kyler Murray game. He ran for 33 yards and a touchdown, but he carried it 6 times. So he did that. Didn't throw the ball a ton, only 32 times, 249 yards, no touchdowns. He did target Trey McBride a lot. And Rondé Moore as well.
As he should.
Yeah, I agree. It was, but I was also pleased that, Mike Wilson had the third most targets on the team with 6. Now, I don't think you can just like throw away Marquise Brown. He's going to get his. It's Kyler's first game. There was a lot of, getting back, in the feel of the game. He looked healthy. He looked strong. He did what he does well. I don't know. Did you see that camera angle from overhead on the one running play where he scrambled? There was this camera angle out there that from the sky cam. It was pretty cool looking, but I think he's missed half the season, so he's the healthiest quarterback going right now. That's something. 19 of 32, decent completion percentage. 249 yards.
I just don't know what Arizona's doing.
Well, in Monty Fort we trust.
I guess.
The thing that surprised me, though, was he didn't target the running backs at all. Not a single target.
The thing that should surprise you is Clayton friggin' Tune got a rushing touchdown, probably ended up with more fantasy points in this game than he did in the game that he started at quarterback.
Well, you can't it's hard to tush push, an elf.
Well, from the outhouse of games to the penthouse of games, if you needed fantasy points, you were really glad you started a Lion or a Charger. Detroit goes to Los Angeles, gets the 41-38 victory. Dennis, was this the best game of the year so far?
It was definitely the best game of the year for me.
Yeah, it was a lot going back.
Montgomery with a 75-yard touchdown, 116 yards. Jahmyr Gibbs, 77 yards, 2 touchdowns. It was great. Gibbs had 5 targets, 3 catches. They didn't target Montgomery at all, but Amon-Ra, 8 for 9, 156. Laporta had kind of a mid game, and that's mostly because Brock Wright got his
big
touchdown. So, but I mean, heck, Jameson Williams was even 2 for 2 on touchdown.
You gotta love Brock Wright's stat line: 2 catches, 23 yards, a touchdown, long reception of 25 yards. So interesting. You touched on it a little bit, but we wondered, it's been a few weeks since we saw both Montgomery and Gibbs healthy and in the same game. Gibbs had really exploded before they went on the bye, and Montgomery came back. They combined for 26 carries, 193 yards, and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Did you like the split? Are you excited about seeing them both moving forward?
So the split kind of told me that they trust Gibbs now. He's earned their trust. They let him have the short yardage touchdowns. He was in there, whether they, I don't remember if they just let him stay or if they put him in, but they didn't sub him out when they needed a 2-yard touchdown. They let him take it and get the touchdowns. And that tells me that they feel pretty confident that they can swap these guys out whenever they need to. And that because Jahmyr Gibbs is the more explosive guy, I get it. Montgomery had a 75-yard run. But Gibbs is the most explosive. And he is a better pass catcher than Montgomery. And Montgomery is good at pass catching. They have 2 phenomenal running backs. I feel like we're going to see a slight edge to Jahmyr Gibbs going forward just because he brings that big play ability. The touches may level out and be fairly even. I think the production will lean Gibbs's way. I think they're both startable.
Meanwhile, you had a great comment in our chat. Was this going to be the week that the defensive play gets Brandon Staley fired? Has not so far. Chargers are 4-5, and in a really crowded AFC landscape, they're sort of an afterthought. What do you make of them?
I liked Herbert was productive. We saw a couple weeks ago, but he only had they had a win, I think, and he only threw for 126, something like that. Eckler was fairly productive, did what he usually does, caught passes, red zone work. Keenan Allen is a monster. I'm not sure if, with Guyton back, is Quentin Johnston going to be able to keep working his way in? Johnston, he caught 4 for 4. It seems like they're remembering, hey, when we drafted this guy, we didn't draft him because he could do what Mike Williams did. We drafted him because if we get him the ball quickly, he's really good with the ball in his hands, and they're starting to play him like that now. He only had 34 yards receiving on 4 catches. But I think as we see this kind of progress, we'll see more of that type of play because Guyton is a speedster. He can get downfield. So he's going to end up being that guy that lifts the lid. The tight ends are a hot mess because whenever they get in the red zone, I get it. Donald Parham is 6'8", but he doesn't get enough volume to be like an elite tight end.
Well, their tight ends are a complete stay away, which is weird because Kellen Moore always seemed to make a lot out of the tight end when he was in Dallas.
Yeah. I don't know. For me, I think if I roster Johnston in Dynasty, I may not be hopeful that he can be like a wide receiver 1, but I'm hopeful that he can be Tyler Boyd maybe.
Next up, the game of the afternoon, America's game of the week, and I'm sure the team at Fox really regretted that decision had been made. The New York Giants went to the Dallas Cowboys. Cowboys beat them 40-0 on opening night. This one they only won by a cool 32, getting the 49-17 victory. Dennis, do you think the Giants are going to be in the market for a quarterback in the draft?
Well, Tommy DeVito has gotten better every single week. And he had 2 touchdown passes this week.
14-27, 86 yards. I mean, those touchdown passes came in garbage time.
So they currently, if the draft were today, they would have the 2nd pick. And as much as they should trade back and take offensive linemen, if they're at the 2nd pick, I would suspect they probably take Drake May. And that's a good pick. I still think Caleb Williams will go 1. But yeah, they've got to be in the market for a quarterback. Jones's contract ties him to the Giants through the 2024 season. After that, it's $22 million to get out of it. They need wide receivers and they need offensive linemen. Those are their biggest needs.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely need everything on offense, but you got to figure. I mean, Daniel Jones probably not the
Barkley's
answer.
going to be gone after this year. They're not going to refranchise him again.
Well, why would you? Meanwhile, for Dallas, the running game, Tony Pollard still kind of plugging along, but I wanted to ask you about Rico Dowdle. He had 12 for 79 touchdown. I know he got a couple of big plays in garbage time, but they actually started mixing him in. I don't know if you watched this game. You're not quite the Dallas aficionado I am, and also it was the only game on in the afternoon for me, but they were mixing him in early, and he was breaking off some big plays and getting them going. It seemed like last year they did better when they had kind of that 2-headed monster in the backfield. Do you think there's any there with Rico Dowdle?
So I think this was as much a game script opportunity as it was anything else. Now, Dowdle, 6 foot 215. He's got good size, runs with decent power. I think they should have been using him more all along. Because Pollard just can't handle the load and stay effective. Unfortunately, they didn't realize that nearly soon enough. But 25% of Dowdle's carries on the season and 30% of his production came this week. So can he be something? He's in his 3rd year. He isn't going to be a breakout guy that we can start to count on for 12 to 15 carries a game. Now, I could be wrong, but it doesn't feel like that's what's going to happen with him. They're throwing the ball. It's Dak, it's Jake, it's Cooks, it's Tolbert. It's
I mean, it was Cooks this week, but let's not get carried away. Brandon Cooks has had his face on a milk carton most of the season.
I can't wait to see what they do with Martavis Bryant.
Oh, God. Stop. Next up, the Commanders traveled to Seattle. The Seahawks got a 29-26 squeak out victory. Dennis, we've seen them already move two huge pieces on defense. Things not quite clicking for Washington, now 4-6, not the worst team in their division or in the NFC, but not really looking like a serious contender. Do you think we're going to see quite a few offseason changes?
I mean, who'd have thought you give up your two best pass rushers and now you give up more points? Funny how that works.
They still can't run the ball. I don't think Montez Sweat and Chase Young were blocking. So
I think that a lot of the changes are going to be dependent on ownership going a different direction with coaching. You know, whether that direction ends up being Eric Bieniemy as the head coach, whether they can the entire staff and go in another direction altogether, I don't know. If it stays status quo, then I don't think we're going to see a lot of changes. I think we'll see, anybody that can come back will be back. They, because they believe in their guys. So Howell, I like what he's doing. I want to. He's figuring out as the season goes on how much time he has before he has to get rid of the ball. He's taking fewer sacks. He's making better decisions. And he's athletic enough for a guy who ran a 4.86 40. We hear so much about his athleticism. He's not fast by any stretch of the imagination, but he just seems to make a lot of the right moves. I don't think we're going to see a lot of 6-catch, 119-yard, one touchdown games out of Brian Robinson, so he should relish this one. But I do think Antonio Gibson is starting to establish a PPR floor, which makes him flex worthy.
And Chris Rodriguez, after his 3-game dalliance, is back to having zero role at all. Meanwhile, Seattle, we hit the midpoint in the season, and here they are, 6-3, tied atop the NFC West. Do you think they're cruising toward the playoffs again?
I mean, if the season ended today, they'd be in. So the running game is it's eating up clock. Some weeks it's efficient, some weeks it's not. Geno Smith had a good game this week, 369 yards. Got the ball to Lockett, Metcalf, Smith and Jigba, Charbonnet. Got it to playmakers, and they made plays. Even Kenneth Walker caught a touchdown.
Not just caught a touchdown, 64-yard touchdown. That's what you like to see.
He's a runner.
13.4 points on one play. We'll take that.
I like the weapons they have. Last season was an anomaly for Geno Smith. I think we'll see flashes of that season like we did in this game. I don't think he's going to carry him far into the playoffs. Just because he didn't write back doesn't mean the letter wasn't there. So he's an average at best quarterback. And he spent a lot of time riding the pine for a reason. So I like the story. Let him maybe even get a playoff win. But I don't think they have I don't think he's the quarterback to take him to the Super Bowl.
Next up, Sunday Night Football, barn burner. New York Jets go to the Las Vegas Raiders. Raiders get the 16-12 victory, move to 2-0 under interim coach Antonio Pierce. Dennis, after another loss that dropped them to 4-5, Robert Saleh said that there would be some changes. said now he's sticking with Zach Wilson. They did release Michael Carter. Do they need to do something else at quarterback? Can they even do something else?
You know, I don't know what else they can do. The trade deadline is passed. Carson Wentz was probably the best available free agent, and I say that unironically. It's the fact that they didn't make a move for a veteran quarterback, a better quarterback. What is Aaron Rodgers slipping them all ayahuasca, and that's why they all think he's coming back in a month?
Well, even he has gone on radio and said that that's too ambitious a timeline. What people reasonably talked about is he could be back for Wild Card Weekend in the playoffs. You have to get there first. Meanwhile, Raiders, moved to 5-5. They're now kind of, they're the second best team in the AFC West. They're kind of making some moves. They do have a much tougher stretch coming up. Do you think that they have enough to get in the playoff race?
I don't think so. I mean, stranger things have happened. Getting Josh Jacobs involved and making him feel like he's valuable to the team certainly helps. Pierce is running the offense through Josh Jacobs and Devontae Adams. That's what you should do when you have those two players. Max Crosby's leading the defense, but I think in the end, I just don't think they have the horses for a playoff run.
I've been thinking about it. I kind of wouldn't mind if Denver got Michael Carter and put him back with Javonte Williams. Then I wouldn't have to see 5'11" Jaleel McLaughlin run for half a yard and get thrown 10 yards back into the backfield.
Well, they've kind of started to not use him as much.
Yeah, because if you watch the games, he's not helping them when they do use him. Speaking of which,
when you got a coach that when he sees somebody not helping, he doesn't use him.
Yeah. Sometimes they release them too. We got rid of a couple of pieces of dead weight. Meanwhile, Monday Night Football, Denver went into Buffalo fresh off the bye and continued their winning streak. They won their third straight game, getting a 24-22 victory. Wasn't always pretty, but Denver now 4-5 after being 1-5, now 4-5. That glimmer of a 10-7 season has caught the glint of people's eye here. I did pick them on Thursday, and they didn't completely let me down, although they probably took a decade off my life last night, especially with that field goal. Thank God Buffalo didn't major in math. Dennis, what have you thought of the last couple of weeks of the Broncos? Do you think they can make a run here?
You know what was beautiful? That Courtland Sutton touchdown catch.
Yeah, what wasn't beautiful? Courtland Sutton fumbling the ball for the third time this season.
He's trying to make plays, man.
I know. I would still take him over Jerry Jeudy any day of the week.
Yeah, it's Sutton he's the guy I want from that offense that's not named Javonte Williams. Williams had a okay day, wasn't super efficient. Did a good job in the passing game, 31 yards and a touchdown, 79 yards on the ground. They produced for fantasy. Sutton produced. I'd like to see more yardage out of Sutton. 8 catches for 53 yards from your field stretcher. That's fuzzy math to me. But Russ only threw it for 193. Only had 5 incompletions, so it was quite a battle. It was funny to watch James Cook get benched and then put up 100 yards. Like, no wonder Ken Dorsey got canned today.
Yeah, Russell Wilson has not been too bad. He's quietly QB 14. He's had at least 8.9 points in every game, so you could do worse as your QB2. And I say that as somebody who's been slipping him in as QB2. And while he may not give you the high highs, he has been a lot better not turning the ball over, and already has, I think they said 17 touchdown passes now, which is 2 more than he had all of last season.
He mentioned for 33 yards as well, or 30 yards.
Yeah.
As well.
I mean, he's a bit too bad for all the hate that he still continues to get on social media and fan boards. He's definitely far from a problem.
That's just because he seems like a weirdo.
Yeah. Maybe not. I can't even say anything. Having been here, what doesn't get reported a lot, he gives back a ton in the community. Almost every week, he's out making a donation and appearing somewhere. So I have to give him a lot of props for that. Meanwhile, Buffalo, as you mentioned, slides to 5-5, which is not a good look for a team that had Super Bowl aspirations. They fired their offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey. 4 turnovers, myriad penalties, a lot of drop passes and missed opportunities. What are we doing with Buffalo?
Well, I'm not buying into the Latavius Murray mirage, because a lot of that production came during those 3 or 4 series when Cook was benched. So I think Cook is still the guy. I think with Diggs, some days you're going to get the 3 for 24, 3 for 34.
I mean, they had him bracketed between Surtain and Simmons most of the game, so I'm not surprised. They were like daring him to throw it to Gabe Davis, and you know what? I was also daring them to throw it to Gabe Davis.
And it was a fantastic game for Dalton Kincaid. Unfortunately, right now for the Bills, Josh Allen is just not making some great decisions, and he's turned back into Wyoming Josh Allen, and we need to figure that out. He's still I think he's still QB1, but from a wins and losses perspective, that's not great.
Yeah, and he's not running very much now. I know they were having more success with other running, but it's almost like he's really trying to stand back there, and that's what leads him to just try to will the ball into some places. And as somebody who's a lifelong Broncos fan, it reminds me of some of the seasons where John Elway was still great, but the pieces around John Elway were not incredible, but he had that huge, strong arm. So he would try to roll out and like will the ball into somebody, and it was either going to break a receiver's hand or get intercepted. Well, Allen threw one so hard last night that I'm pretty sure, even though Gabe Davis isn't my favorite receiver, he couldn't physically catch it. They were talking about it on the broadcast. It looked like it just was too hard for his hands. So it's going to be interesting to see. They have a big game with the Jets this week. 2 teams that are going to be in semi-desperation mode. Buffalo has one of the later bye weeks, so they really got to get it turned around pretty quick. Dennis and I are going to be back with you again on Thursday night. We'll actually be coming to you live in the midst of the Thursday night football game. So we're going to touch on it briefly here, and we'll give you some updates when we're on live. About 8:30 Eastern is when we're going to kick off on Thursday night. But a really good Thursday night football. Last week's Thursday night football, you wouldn't have minded us being in there because you probably wouldn't have missed much in that 16-13 slugfest between the Bears and the Panthers. But this week we get the 5-4 Cincinnati Bengals at the 7-3 Baltimore Ravens. Huge divisional matchup. 2 teams that are both coming off of some kind of difficult losses that really need wins. T. Higgins officially questionable. Chase, I didn't see him on the injury report today, which is probably a good sign as he's working his way back. I'm going to go ahead and take the Bengals because I just like their offense a little bit better. I think they're clicking a little bit better. And if they drop to 5-5, they're going to be in a world of hurt.
Yeah, the Ravens defense is playing pretty well, and they're going to be at home. I don't know if Sam Hubbard's going to be back, so that's going to, that weakens that Cincinnati defense. I'm pretty sure Higgins is not going to be playing. I thought I heard today that he's expected to miss the game. and we know Mixon isn't an efficient runner. Does that mean Burrow can't will this team to victory? He certainly can, but I'm taking the Ravens.
Yeah, I'll do a quick check-in on because earlier today, yeah, Higgins listed as questionable. They don't really have so is Sam Hubbard listed as questionable. So definitely things to watch tomorrow. You usually get a more definitive injury report for the Thursday night game. For Baltimore, Odell Beckham sat out practice today with a sore knee, which has got to be a little bit of a worrying sign.
He did catch one pass. How much do you expect from the guy?
They were also without Marlon Humphrey and Daryl Worley, a couple of their cornerbacks who are now questionable, and Kyle Van Noy at linebacker. Probably also a little more worrying. Listed as a DNP was Ronnie Staley, their offensive tackle. So a couple of things to keep an eye on. Thursday night games, sometimes the guys can't quite bounce back. Also, sometimes they don't have them practice much in the 3 days running up to it so that they can actually survive the Thursday night game, but it should be a fun one. Hopefully we'll get some wow plays while we're on. I think Dennis and I will both probably have a monitor on while we're going along. But you have to endure one long and lonely day without us and without a football game tomorrow. So Dennis, what can the people do?
Well, the people can thank us for putting in this time. And I want to thank you for letting me move our second show this week, because I'm taking my kid and we're going to see the Hilliard Bradley Jaguars football team. They're playing in the district finals. They're 11-1, playing against Upper Arlington, which is the old money suburb to the east of us. And so they're 9-3. We really want to beat them. So there's 4 games going on. So they have the potential to play 2. They have to win 2 more games to win the state championship. So go Jaguars. But you guys listen, go to your favorite podcast platform, hit that subscribe button, download, listen, leave us a like and a review. We appreciate that.
Well, that'll do it for us today, and we will see you on Thursday night. Have a great week.